Hi everyone, Flavia here, and thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, I will be showing you all of the note cards that I created, featuring some of Spellbinder's September 2025 clubs, which are all about the fall season and its two big holidays, Halloween and Thanksgiving. As I show you each note card that I created, I will also be giving you a closer look at each one of the Spellbinder's September club that I have, and I hope this inspires you to get creative. I know I say this every month, but I really had the best time creating with these clubs. It just keeps on getting better and better. If you have been watching my videos for a while, you know that Christmas is my favorite holiday, and I just have the best time creating note cards with a Christmas theme. And to be honest, Thanksgiving up until this month's clubs used to be my least favorite theme for creating a note card. Maybe because I didn't have the right supplies, or I just never really felt inspired for creating note cards for the fall or Thanksgiving. As you can see here, I just had a blast creating with this month's clubs, and I ended up making lots of note cards. Spellbinders offers many different types of monthly subscription clubs, such as small die, large die, embossing folder, 3D embossing folder, stencils, clear stamp, beta press plates, what else? Hot foil set. They also have a stitching die club and a few other clubs. And what I really love about all of the different clubs, aside from the fact that we can subscribe to and cancel anytime, is that they all go together really well, making it really easy for us to come up with design ideas for our projects. So without further ado, let's begin taking a closer look at each one of these note cards. By the way, a few minutes ago, before I decided to sit down to record this video, I went ahead and actually purchased myself my first pumpkin flavor drink of the season, just to celebrate all of these amazing fall themed note cards that I created. This is the pumpkin chai tea latte. I decided to get an iced tea today because the weather is pretty nice outside, but usually I get it hot, and to be honest, it is delicious either way. I know that pumpkin flavor is not for everybody, but I am definitely one of those people who just loves it, and that's what I'm gonna be sipping on as I go over all of the note cards. Let's begin with this one with a craft color envelope, which is my favorite type of envelope, as I mentioned in my previous videos. Usually when I don't have the time to make my own custom envelope, I grab a craft color one because I feel like it goes well with any color of note card that will go inside, especially this one. I think it matches perfectly. So let's begin with the envelope, which is going to be pretty quick. Here we have a craft color envelope. To decorate it and make it match the note card, I added 1¼ inches wide cardstock strip, same color as the cardstock that I use for the note card, and then a thinner cardstock strip. And then I stamped onto the flap of the envelope a nice sentiment that reads, "May your fall be full of quiet wonder," using the Spellbinder's clear stamp of the month. This note card is top folding, so it measures 5½ inches tall by 4¼ inches wide, and in the center we have 3 different sizes of pumpkins with some hand stitch that I did using metallic floss. And at the bottom right corner, I decided to add a die cut sentiment hello and then a sentiment banner under that. To make this note card, I used a couple of different club subscriptions for this month. One is the Spellbinder's Clear Stamp and Die of the Month for September 2025, which is this one. So with the Clear Stamp and Die of the Month, we have, let me grab a piece of cardstock. So this is the Spellbinder's September 2025 Clear Stamp and then Die of the Month, with this one large piece that allows us to stamp many different images at once, and we have the coordinating die plates that will allow us to cut each one of these large images out. Aside from this large clear stamp, we also have a couple of different sentiments that go really well with this month's themes, such as have a charmed Halloween, a little fall charm just for you, that made my day, thanks. Then we have hope your night glows with magic. Over here we have hope this season wraps you in comfort. And then we have this one, may your fall be full of quiet wonder, which is my favorite. So this is what I used for the sentiment. Actually, this is what I used to stamp the sentiment onto the flap of my envelope. To cut out this sentiment at the bottom right corner of my note card, I actually used the stitching die club. So with this club, we have lots of different plates that will allow us to first cut out these 3 pumpkins in 3 different sizes. And as we can see here, the metal plates will cut out tiny holes onto the cardstock that we can use to do some stitching. The stitching is definitely optional. If you can't or if you do not like stitching, you can definitely skip that step, which is what I did for a few other note cards that I will show you in a minute. Then we have these 2 plates over here to create the stem for each pumpkin, and then we have the leaves, which is what I used to cut out these leaves. I actually cut out all of these leaves from white cardstock scraps, and then I added color by ink blending over them with yellow, orange, and red ink. And over here, as we can see, we have the sentiment word hello and the sentiment banner, which is what I use for this sentiment on the bottom right corner of my note card. This note card can stand nicely on display, which is always my goal, and inside the note card I did stamp the sentiment hope this season wraps you in comfort using the clear stamp of the month that I just showed you, and I did add 2 acorns that I cut out using a different die set that I'm gonna show you in a minute. So here is a closer look at the first note card that I created. By the way, this beautiful brown cardstock that I used for my background is by Spellbinders, and it is in the color Timber. This one, it looks darker on my note card because after I cut a piece of this cardstock, I did go around the edges with a darker shade of brown ink, and then to add some sparkle, I'm not sure you can see on the video, but this brown panel has a lot of golden shimmer, and that is because after I ink blended around the edges with a darker shade of brown ink and a blending brush, I did spray this shimmer spray all over my panel before adding the die cuts. I did use strong liquid adhesive to adhere the sentiment and the leaves onto my panel. However, for the pumpkins, I think you can see it, I did add foam adhesive in the back of each pumpkin just for some added dimension. However, if you don't like adding dimension to your note cards, you can just go ahead and use liquid glue. By the way, actually I think I've mentioned this before, I did use DMC metallic floss, which adds a lot of sparkle, and for even more sparkle I used an old piece of metallic cardstock to cut out the word hello and the solid piece under the stitched layer. It is an old cardstock that I love. I love this color, especially for this month's theme, and if I can remember where I got it from, I will make sure to list it in the description box down below. So this is the first note card that I created featuring some of Spellbinders September 2025 clubs, and I just love the result. So let's now move this aside so I can show you the next 2. They are very similar. Again, I did use craft color envelope, and I did decorate each flap with cardstock strips, and I stamped the sentiment warmest thanks. Inside each envelope we have 2 very similar note cards, and as we can see here, to make these flowers, I actually use these plates included in the Spellbinders Stitching Die of the Month. By the way, the Spellbinders Stitching Die of the Month for September 2025 is called Stitched Pumpkin Tops. To cut out the pieces to make each one of these flowers, I actually use these plates included in the Spellbinders Stitching Die of the Month, which are the same plates that I used to cut out each one of these pumpkins. The only difference is that I decided to not do any stitching at all, as we can see here, and after die cutting each one of these pieces that are supposed to be pumpkins, I decided to stack the smaller one on top of the bigger one to create these 3 layers of flower. And then in the center, I just went ahead and added a golden flat back bead. And the thing that I love the most about cutting with stitching plates and not doing any stitching at all is that we get to see all of the nice pattern that these plates add to the cardstock. The engraved lines on the cardstock works as a guide that we can follow as we stitch, which gets covered once we're all done. So I love not doing any stitching once in a while, so we can see all of these nice patterns on the cardstock. So I did stack up all of the 3 different sizes to create this dimensional large flower, and noticed that the background has a lot of texture, and that is thanks to the Spellbinders 3D embossing folder, which is called Patchwork, which is this one, by the way. This is the Spellbinders September 2025 3D embossing folder of the month, which is pretty large, and the pattern is just perfect for this month's theme. Regarding the acorns and the large branches and leaves, I did use a few other plates included in a few other clubs that I'm gonna show you in a minute. And for the sentiment, I used a really old set by Spellbinders. It was never released as a club, and I will make sure to list it in the description box down below if it is still available. And if I can find it, maybe I can give you a closer look. Okay, I was able to find it. So this is the Spellbinders Sentiment die set that I used to cut out the sentiment thank you for each one of these note cards. This is the Spellbinders Serenade Sentiments die set with many different words that we can use to create sentiments for many different occasions. And what I love about this set is that for each word we have the die plate to cut out a shadow piece if you want to. I decided not to use onto these note cards, but I think it is really great that we have this option with this die set. So this is the set that I used to cut out these sentiments. Inside the note, I forgot I forgot that I had added this surprise inside each note card. So inside each note card, they are both same. I decided to die cut a squirrel holding an acorn, and I did stamp the sentiment that made my day. Thanks. To stamp this sentiment, I did use this clear sentiment strip included in the Spellbinders clear stamp of the month. However, as I placed this sentiment onto my stamping tool, the Missy stamping tool, I curved this clear stamp just a little bit, just to change its shape and better frame this image, and I really like the end result. When you do this trick using your stamping tool, you have to have everything in place, the cardstock in place and the ink pad handy, because this will not stay curved for too long, so you gotta move fast. However, it will stay curved long enough. So yeah, it is a trick that I do all the time when I need to change the shape of the stamped sentiment to better frame the image around it. So here is a closer look at this cutie, and here is another closer look at the note card, and I love the texture onto my background. By the way, notice that the acorns have a lot of sparkle, and that is because I went over it with a shimmer pen. To cut out all of these pieces, I used Spellbinders cardstock, and I actually can show you the colors that I used. So for the leaves, I did use a bright green, this one, Peridot, and I did go over sections of each die cut leaf with a darker shade of green ink just to add some depth. That is why it has 2 tones of green. For this flower, I did use Spellbinders cardstock. I think it's this one. Yes, in the color Terracotta. I guess that's how you say it. Hopefully it is. And then for the solid piece that is sticking to the tiny dots, I used Spellbinders cardstock in the color Crimson. Then for this flower, I used my two new favorite colors of Spellbinders cardstock. This is my all-time favorite. I used Spellbinders Orchid to cut out the solid piece that is sticking through the tiny holes, and for the purple layer I used Violet cardstock by Spellbinders. Then I used an old piece of glitter cardstock for the sentiment because you know me, I loved adding sparkle to my projects, and these are the two note cards that I created with the Spellbinders stitching die of the month without doing any stitching. So let's move these out of the way so I can show you the next one, which is this. So as we can see, to decorate the flap of this envelope, I used this large image, this large clear stamp included in the Spellbinders clear stamp of the month. By the way, the clear stamp of the month is called Autumn Wind, and the coordinating die set, which is this one over here, it actually comes with 21 cutting dies, which is a lot of dies, and we even have included these long plates that we can use to cut out the stamped sentiments, which is wonderful. So here we have the envelope, and inside we have a very simple note card that I created using only the clear stamp and die of the month. So let me give you a closer look at this note card before I begin explaining to you how I made this one. This one was pretty simple. I began by stamping all of these images at once with this one large clear stamp. Then I used the coordinating die plates to cut out each one of these images, and I did use coloring pencils to color each one of these images. Then using pieces of white cardstock scraps, I did cut out extra pieces without doing any stamping, just so I could stack them up for some added dimension, but you can definitely skip that step if you don't want to. So after coloring and die cutting each one of these images, I decided to add 6 different pieces to the front of my note card, and at the bottom I stamped the sentiment "A Little Fall Charm Just For You," and I tried to fill in some of the white spaces between each die cut piece with golden flat back beads in 2 different sizes, and I really like how it turned out. Inside the note card we have another stamped sentiment that reads, "Hope this season wraps you in comfort." By the way, since I am not really good at coloring, I do enjoy it, I think, but I'm not really good at it. So this time I decided to use coloring pencils, the Faber-Castell coloring pencils, instead of markers, because I feel that with coloring pencils we have more control than when coloring with markers, and I highly recommend you give it a try if you also need to color something but feel a little bit awkward doing so. You can blend the different colors with the Faber-Castell coloring pencils just as you would with Copic markers to create different shades. However, I feel like it is way easier, and I actually had a blast coloring these images. So this is the 4th note card that I created featuring some of Spellbinders September 2025 clubs. Let me move this note card out of the way and get this desk a little bit organized so I can show you the next note card. By the way, these plastic containers are by Spellbinders. They are the Spellbinders craft stacks, and that is what I use to store the stamps and die sets that I am working with at the moment, and I just love it. You can easily stack them up and even include extra die cut pieces that you plan on using soon, so it's always easy to find and very handy. Okay, so here we have the next note card, again craft color envelope with a thin cardstock strip just to make it look nicer. Inside we have an A2 size note card with a landscape orientation. As we can see here, it stands nicely on display, and at the front we have this adorable scene that I created using a couple of different clubs by Spellbinders. Let's begin with the background, the hot foiled panel, and the sentiment. Actually, for the hot foiled background, I used the Spellbinders Glimmer of the Month for September 2025, which is called Gilded Weave and Copper Foil. The Spellbinders Glimmer of the Month comes not only with a hot foil set, which is this one, but also with a hot foil roll, and this month is in the color Copper, which is just perfect for this season. So with this month's hot foil set, we have this large plate to create a background panel that can cover the entire front of an A2 size note card. Again, plates like this are just perfect for doing the reverse foiling technique, which is what I did for one note card that I'm gonna show you in a second. So aside from this large plate, we have two sentiment options. One that reads Stay Cozy and Spooky, and another one that reads Boo to You, Sweet Soul, just perfect for the Halloween. Let me grab the foil so I can show you. This is the foil that we get with this month's Glimmer of the Month subscription club. By the way, this is the DMC floss that I used to stitch the first note card that I showed you. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place, but I forgot to show you this one, and I really wanted you to see the color. This is just gorgeous. It matches perfectly the foil of the month. So stitching with this type of thread, metallic ones, can be tricky sometimes because they tend to get tangled easily, so make sure you do take your time when working with this type of thread, but they are just gorgeous and add a lot of sparkle, so I love using them regardless. So that's that. Let's get back to this note card. So for the background, I used this panel, this plate with this gorgeous foil. I also used this foil to hot foil the sentiment thanks. However, I used an old set by Spellbinders to hot foil and die cut this sentiment, which is, oh my goodness. I swear I did get organized for this video, but I don't know. I just can't find my supplies anymore. Here, found it. So this was actually released as a subscription club for September 2024, which goes to show you that your supplies do not have an expiration date. They never get old, especially if it's a good one. So this is the Spellbinders Friendly Thanks hot foil set, released as the Glimmer of the Month for September 2024. We have a couple of amazing, really great sentiment options, including the word thanks that comes with the coordinating die plate, which is what I used over here. To create this scene, I used, oh my goodness, my favorite set for this month, which is the Spellbinders. Look how cute this is. This is the Spellbinders Acorn Acres large die of the month with 26 metal plates included that we can use to cut out a large acorn, actually a large house in the shape of an acorn, which is what I used over here. Then we have plates over here to create sentiments, happy, and then the sentiment banner, fall from all of us, or the other option is happy Thanksgiving. Over here we have a couple of plates to cut out the door and the window for the acorn shaped house, which is this one. Then we have this large plate to cut out the ground. We also have options for to cut out two different sizes of acorns over here. We have one plate that cuts two flowers at once, and then down here on the bottom left corner we have 5 different options for leaves. And since English is not my first language and I wanted to learn the names of each one of these, I created this chart. So I began by die cutting each one of these leaves using pieces of cardstock scraps and these plates, and next to it, I wrote down the name. So the first one is an ash tree leaf. Then we have white oak leaf. Then my favorite, buckeye leaf. I think it's my favorite. It might change. Then we have red oak leaf. And last but not least, a birch leaf. Hopefully I will memorize these names. So yes, so this is the Spellbinders amazing large die of the month for September 2025, which is what I used to cut out this beautiful acorn-shaped house. So at the front of this note card, we have this large acorn-shaped house with a pretty nice door. Next to it, outside, we have this adorable orange squirrel holding a pretty large acorn. Inside the note card, we have an orange squirrel holding a large die-cut heart to go with the sentiment for having a big heart. So at the front we have thanks, and then inside the reason why you are thanking the person for having a big heart. To hot foil the sentiment, I used again a plate included in this old Spellbinders club, which is really good. And aside for thanks for having a big heart, we also have the option to hot foil thanks for being a friend, or this card is full of thanks. We can also create a sentiment thanks is all I can say, and thanks for lending a hand. Love this set, especially for making these type of note cards. So moving on, let me show you the next one, which is also just as cute. Again, we have a craft color envelope, and on the flap of the envelope I added the die cut sentiment Happy Thanksgiving. Inside we have another note card with a really cute scene, and actually this might be my favorite one. Love this one. So again, to create this scene I used plates included in the Spellbinders large die of the month. Decided to change the color of the squirrel and add a black door for this house. Then to decorate the background, I actually used the leftover die cut leaves that I cut out to make the first note card using these plates included in the Spellbinders stitching die of the month. Again, I cut it from pieces of white cardstock and I ink blended each one of these die cut leaves with a mix of yellow, orange and red ink, and even bright green ink for some of these leaves, and I love the result. At the bottom, I decided to stamp the sentiment, "May your fall be full of quiet wonder," and inside the note cards, I added another cutie holding a large acorn. Again, to add sparkle to some of these pieces, I used this shimmer pen, which is my favorite. I probably use this pen on most of the note cards that I make. Probably my most used tool in my craft room. One of them. One of many, maybe. I do use my supplies a lot. Then to fill in some of these white spaces in the background, I added golden flat back beads in 3 different sizes, and I made sure to use strong liquid adhesive to adhere each one of these beads onto my panel, because I do not want to see any of them falling apart later. To add some dimension to this note card, I did use foam adhesive to adhere the large house to my note card. For everything else, I just used the Bernie Art glue. Actually, I did add dimension to the squirrel as well. So this is my favorite note card. Isn't it adorable? This is definitely the best fall-themed note card that I've ever made, and that's because these clubs make it so easy for us to create with. So let's move this aside. So here we have another craft color envelope, which is just perfect for this month's theme. And as usual, I added cardstock strips to the flap of my envelope, and I did add some leftover die cut acorns. This is why usually when I die cut, most of the time I cut more than what I need, because I love having leftovers that I can use to decorate the flap of the envelope to make it match the note card, as well as to decorate the inside of the note card, creating this way a fun surprise for the recipient. So I highly recommend it. Like, when you take your time to die cut, always die cut extra pieces. You will not regret it. You can always find a reason to use your leftover die cut pieces. So inside this we have this A2 size note card with actually a stenciled background. So let me move this out of the way so I can show you the stencil set that I used, which is the Spellbinders September 2025 stencil of the month, which is named Acorns and Oats. So with the Spellbinders September stencil of the month, we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different layers. This is a layering stencil with 5 different layers, which is really great. I love layering stencils because it allows us to easily add different colors to different sections of your panel, which is so much fun and just really easy to create with. So to make this note card, I began by stenciling a large piece of white cardstock. Then after I finished stenciling my panel, I used the leftover pieces of die cut acorns and I did glue them over the stenciled acorns. So the acorns are actually die cut pieces, but if you don't want to do that, that is fine, because under each die cut acorn there is a stenciled acorn that I decided to cover because I had all of these extra die cut acorns and I wanted to add a little bit of dimension. So after stenciling this panel and adding each die cut acorn, I went ahead and cut my panel on a diagonal. I saved the piece that was supposed to go over here and I glue it inside the note card. I used it to decorate the inside of the note card. So inside my note card there is a white panel that I cut slightly smaller. This note card is 5.5 inches tall by 4.25 inches wide, and inside we have a white panel that is 5.25 inches tall by 4 inches wide. Before I glue the white panel onto my note card, I did add this stenciled section and trimmed off the excess before adding the whole thing to my note card. So here is a closer look at my Happy Thanksgiving note card. Again, each die cut acorn has a lot of sparkle thanks to my Nuvo Aqua Shimmer pen. And to stencil these images, I used ink pads by Simon Says Stamp. I love the colors, the positively saturated ink pads. So for some of the leaves I used red and yellow ink. And for the green ones, I blended bright green ink with bright yellow ink. And again, for the sentiment, Happy Thanksgiving. These are die cuts that I created with, let me see if I can remember. I think I already showed you. Yes, I used the Spellbinders large die of the month, this word die, to cut out the word happy, and then Thanksgiving using this banner sentiment plate. By the way, speaking of stencils, know that Spellbinders, aside from the all different subscription clubs, they also have a club named something like Spellbinders Deluxe Kabuto Club Kit, which is a club that when you subscribe to, you actually get all of the different clubs that Spellbinders has to offer, along with a bonus item that can be anything from a surprise stamp set to a die set or a crafty tool. And this month's bonus item happened to be a stencil, which is this one, which is meant to help you quickly add color to this large stamped image that you can stamp with the Spellbinder Clear Stamp of the month. So this is the bonus item, 2 different stencil sets that you can line it up with the stamped images to add some color. However, again, since I have some really nice coloring pencils, I decided to not use the stencil and just try coloring with coloring pencils, and I ended up really enjoying the process. But stencils can definitely be quicker than coloring image by image. So let's move this out of the way, and I actually have two more note cards to show you. So the last two are Halloween themed note cards. This time I decided to take my time to make my own custom pocket shape envelopes, and I think I'm gonna begin with this one. So before I glue the different pieces of this envelope together, I decided to hot foil this section using that large plate. This one included in the Spellbinders Glimmer of the Month, just to make it match the note card that will go inside. I also decided to hot foil the sentiment Good to You Sweet Soul using this sentiment plate included in this kit. Inside we have an A2 size note card that is top folding, and at the front we have 3 die-cut ghosts, and the hot foiled sentiment I used white foil to hot foil the sentiment Stay Cozy and Spooky. In the background we have a foiled panel which I created with a leftover piece of foil used to hot foil this panel. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this plate is great for doing the hot foiling technique, which is what I did to avoid any waste. So after I hot foiled this panel and created this note card, I saved the leftover piece of foil, and using a large, actually this plate, I used this large solid hot foil plate by Pinkfresh Studio, and with this plate I was able to transfer the leftover piece of foil used to make this note card onto another piece of cardstock, an orange cardstock. And if you can see here, with the hot foiling technique we got the opposite result from this one. So with this one, when you use this plate, you have the foiled lines on the background, and then when you do the reverse foiling technique with the leftover piece, we actually transfer whatever is left onto the foil piece, which happens to be the solid pieces. So the lines on this paper is just the orange cardstock, and the foiled sections is actually the solid sections. So that is what I did. I did the reverse foiling technique onto a piece of orange cardstock by Spellbinders, and I did ink blend around the edges with red ink. And to die cut these pieces, these 3 ghosts, I used another club. This is the Spellbinders Small Die of the Month, and this one is named Harvest Magic, and it comes with lots of fun plates that we can use to create Halloween note cards, such as these at the top left corner. These plates will allow us to create a large pumpkin like this one. Then we have this one plate that will cut out 2 different ghosts at once. This one that I used onto my note card, and this other one. To make the eyes glossy, I did add Novo drops. And what else? We also have this is my favorite, this die plate to cut out an adorable cat. Isn't it cute? Moving on, we also get a couple of different plates to cut out branches and flowers, and 2 more options for acorns. So lots of great plates to create note cards for Halloween. So again, here is a closer look at my note card, the front panel. Inside we have a surprise. We have the sentiment Have a Spectacular Halloween, and I added another die cut piece. To stamp the sentiment, I used a really old set by Spellbinders, one of my favorites when it comes to Halloween sets, which is it this one? No, it is not this one. This is another good one. This is the Dancing Halloween Sentiments. I mean, just perfect. But it's not what I used. I actually used this other one. Wait, have I used this? Yeah, this one. So this is the Spellbinders Boo Dance Party Sentiments with 23 clear stamps. Really great stamps, by the way. Some of them are pretty funny. And I chose to stamp this one over. Where is it? Have a Spectacular. Yes, here. Something is wrong with me today. So this is the clear stamp that I used to stamp this note card. Regarding the colors, I used Spellbinders cardstock in the color. It is a bright orange, this one, Persimmon. It's a really nice bright orange color. And I cut it to 5.5 by 4.25 inches, and I glue it onto a white card base. So this is the first Halloween note card that I created with the Spellbinders September 2025 clubs. Moving on, here we have the last note card that I have to show you. It is also a Halloween themed note card. Again, a pocket shaped envelope that I made myself using die plates included in a set named A2 gift card holder and envelope die set by Stampandas, available at Spellbinders website. I do talk about this set all the time because it is so easy to use to make your custom envelopes, and I think it makes all the difference. So here we have, okay, another favorite. I mean, seriously, I love this one. This time we have a black card base, and inside I added white panels to create a room to write a special message. However, if you have a gel pen, you don't even have to add white cardstock inside. It looks really nice when you write using a white gel pen on black cardstock. But just out of habit, I ended up adding white panels inside. So at the front, I began by hot foiling a piece of Spellbinders black cardstock, which is this gorgeous cardstock. It's one of my favorites, and I did use this foil, the copper color foil, and however the card base is not this fancy shimmer cardstock by Spellbinders. I just use a regular black cardstock and only added my specialty cardstock onto the front panel to do the hot foiling technique. For the sentiment, I decided to hot foil the sentiment Wood to You, Sweet Soul, using a piece of white foil. I love adding white sentiments onto my note cards. I don't really do it often because I never really enjoyed stamping with white pigment inks. I think it can be frustrating. The ink pad gets dried quickly, and I just could never get this nice white crisp result. So hot foiling with white foil is definitely a game changer for me, and yes, I'm just never ever again going to try to stamp a sentiment with white ink pad, because hot foiling with white foil is, for me at least, way easier and less frustrating. Unless you stamp with a watermark pad and then hit emboss it with white powder, that is a good option too, at least in my opinion, better than just stamping with white ink. But to get this really nice bright white sentiment, I think it's better to hot foil it with white foil. So that's what we have for the sentiment strip. Then I cut it onto a sentiment strip using a long die plate from an older set. Regarding this scene, I used the plates included in the small die of the month. I added a die cut pumpkin. For some sparkle, I used Spellbinders Mirror Gold cardstock to cut out this solid piece that is under this orange die cut piece. For the cat, I used Spellbinders Brushed Black cardstock, which is the same black cardstock as the background, but since the background has so much interest, it kind of keeps the die cut cat from blending in too much with the black background. For the lips, I used some of these plates, and I cut it from a really dark green cardstock by Spellbinders in the color Forest. And what else? Inside the note card, we have a nice surprise. We have the sentiment have a Spooktacular Halloween, again using this older set by Spellbinders over here, same as the previous one. And I added another cat with a pumpkin hat, which we can create using plates included in this set. So here is a closer look, and that completes this video. Let me know in the comment section down below which note card is your favorite, and if you're also creating with the Spellbinders clubs. As always, thank you so much for spending this time with me, and I hope you felt inspired to create. I hope you have an amazing day, take care, and happy crafting!